All living things on Earth have been created with miraculous features and astonishing abilities. One can see hundreds of proofs of Allah's magnificent creation by examining just one single species. Birds, a group consisting of some 10,000 species, are well worth reflecting on and examining. Each separate species has been equipped with its own amazing characteristics, with their bright plumage and attractive appearances, sounds and songs that all carry a different message. Flawless flight mechanisms that inspire modern aircraft, the ability to build nests, and their migratory expertise. Birds possess countless features that all represent proof of the fact of creation. At the same time, birds have also been created with a special ability in terms of establishing social groups. Many species of bird live in communities. They thus warn each other of approaching dangers. They work together to find food and shelter. They also help one another by engaging in altruistic behavior. Some birds are particularly noteworthy in terms of their intelligence and various abilities. For instance, they can dance. They can play games with you. They can understand what you say. They can even imitate sounds. Most of us have heard of birds' ability to talk, and we may even have seen this on the television or witnessed it live. There is no doubt that these creatures' ability to talk or imitate speech is something quite out of the ordinary. Human beings find it difficult to imitate someone else's voice or speech. The way that tiny birds are able to flawlessly replicate a great many sounds or exhibit the ability to talk is a most extraordinary state of affairs. All these miraculous properties of birds are means whereby we can witness the infinite might of Allah. Allah draws our attention to birds in a verse from the Quran. I seek refuge in Allah from the accursed Satan. Do you not see that everyone in the heavens and the earth glorifies Allah, as do the birds with their outspread wings? Each one knows its prayer and glorification. Allah knows what they do. Birds communicate through cries, songs, and body language. They employ a variety of sounds to communicate with other members of the flock, neighbors, or family members. Every bird species sings its own particular song, although these songs may vary depending on age, sex, geographical location, and the time of the year. In other words, a bird knows what sound to use in which specific environment. We, however, are generally unable to understand the message carried by these sounds. However, some sounds made by birds do seem familiar to us. They sound familiar because these birds are able to imitate the human voice. Learning how to use speech, a feature of human language, is something very rarely encountered in animals. This feature is known to be present in only a very few animals.
Hello. Say hello.
The best example being the parrot. Parrots are able to imitate a great many sounds, such as a creaking door, a bottle being opened, a telephone ring, or a tune being whistled, as well as human speech.
Hello. What's your name?
People are amazed the first time they hear a parrot say, "Hello," when the phone rings, or "Who is there?" when the doorbell rings, or when they call someone they know by his or her name. Many people never properly reflect on this amazing phenomenon, or else regard it as something perfectly natural. The fact of the matter is that a large number of astonishing events take place in order for a bird to speak a single word.
Okay.
In order for a bird to repeat a word, to hear, or to sing a tune, its physical structure needs to be suited to the task. Its senses of hearing and sight have to function flawlessly. It has to be able to record the data it receives from its senses in its memory, and it also has to have some ability to understand and comprehend. Yet birds, like all other animals, are creatures with no free will or reasoning ability. Unlike human beings, they have no capacity for thought, taking conscious decisions, or acting in a determined manner in order to put these into practice. It is Allah, the Omniscient, who causes them to behave in this way, and it is He who permits them to exhibit surprising signs of intelligence. We are told in a verse that all living things are under the control of Allah. I seek refuge in Allah from the accursed Satan. I have put my trust in Allah, my Lord and your Lord. There is no creature He does not hold by the forelock. My Lord is on a straight path. Contrary to what many people imagine, there is more to speaking or to imitating a sound than merely just opening and closing the mouth. Complex systems need to coexist in order for this to happen, and all the components of these systems have to work flawlessly and in complete harmony with one another. In the light of all this, birds' ability to imitate sounds displays a great many extraordinary features. Birds' throats bear no resemblance to those of human beings. Physical structures that play roles in human speech, such as the throat, vocal cords, tongue, lips, and teeth, are completely different in birds. In fact, birds actually lack some of these organs altogether. Scientists examine the way birds sing and speak thanks to fiber optic microscopes they place in their throats. In physical terms, however, they still do not know how birds manage to sing and to imitate sounds. Birds have no throats of the kind human beings possess, though they have a special organ known as the syrinx that allows them to produce sounds. This sound organ is like a dual instrument in the chest, where the windpipe divides into two bronchia. One end of the syrinx opens into one bronchium, and the other end into the other, and both of these channels are able to produce sounds. This permits the bird to produce two notes at the same time, and even to sing a duet with itself. The sounds produced here later mingle with one another, allowing bird songs to contain rich melodies. In other words, the complexity of the syrinx determines the complexity of the notes that emerge. In addition, sound quality is also influenced by the length of the windpipe, the narrowing of the throat, the muscles in the throat, and the structure and movements of the beat. Parrots, myna birds, and some singing birds have more syrinx muscles than other birds. In addition, the structure of the organ is more complex. This flawless creation in sound production in birds is also present in their sense of hearing. Birds have very sensitive ears and they hear in a different manner compared to human beings. In order for birds to recognize a tune, they have to always hear the tune in the same octave. Yet, human beings can recognize a melody even if they hear it in a different octave. Birds are unable to do this. Instead, they recognize timbres. A bird hears a wide variety of sounds to which it can respond thanks to what it remembers as timbres and harmonic variations. It is sometimes even able to produce these itself. Birds are also able to hear shorter notes compared to humans. They are also able to distinguish between sounds very quickly, far better than human beings. Birds' ability to perceive sounds is some 10 times superior to that of human beings. A bird can hear 10 different sounds in the time it takes a human being to hear one. Birds are so sensitive to sound that they are even able to differentiate musical pieces by such famous composers as Bach and Stravinsky. This exceedingly complex sense of hearing in the bird's function is created in a perfect manner. It is obvious that each of the components in their sense of hearing has been created with its own special design. Allah creates all living things with just the features they need, and He inspires intelligent behavior in them. I seek refuge in Allah from the accursed Satan. Does He who created the heavens and the earth not have the power to create the same again? Yes, indeed, He is the Creator, the All-Knowing. His command when He desires a thing is just to say to it, "Be," and it is. Birds call to one another using the very powerful and very high-frequency sounds they produce. These sounds range from simple calls to amazingly long and complex songs. Some birds, however, make no sounds at all, such as pelicans, storks, and some vultures. The acoustically structured sounds that birds use among each other constitute a communication language. Bird songs, on the other hand, are generally longer and usually consist of a series of notes containing a tune. Birds' songs are usually heard in the spring, though bird calls can be heard all year round. These calls allow a simple message to be transmitted very quickly without much energy being expended. They also perform a number of functions. Birds use calls to communicate, sometimes in order to introduce offsprings to their parents, sometimes to keep the flock together, sometimes to report the presence of a food source somewhere, sometimes to warn the others of enemies, and sometimes to frighten enemies away. Bird songs are not just random notes. They are tunes produced for a specific purpose and bear a specific message. These tunes come in an extraordinary variety. Song is a much more complex process that the call birds use as a signal to one another. They are generally employed by males for purpose of show, for defending their territory, or for courting. It is even thought that songs have a social function. For example, pairs of birds communicate by way of song when nest building. Birds use the most appropriate technique for their habitat and objectives. The way that a bird knows which song to sing in which environment, and the meaning and purpose of the song it will sing, is not something that it can calculate for itself. It is only possible for creatures devoid of thought and judgment to display such intelligent behavior and such foresight by the inspiration of Allah. This is the only source of the conscious behavior they engage in and the abilities they possess. I seek refuge in Allah from the accursed Satan. And He has made everything in the heavens and everything on the earth subservient to you. It is all from Him. There are certainly signs in that for people who reflect. Some birds have another ability, as well as all their other miraculous features. Learning.
What a noise!
The African grey parrot is known to be the best talented of all birds when it comes to understanding and learning. One of the parrot's striking characteristics is the way it can relate speech to objects or movements. For example, if one says "good morning" to a parrot every morning as one lifts up the tablecloth, it may one day say those words of its own accord as the tablecloth is lifted up. Indeed, most birds can do this without ever having been specially taught to do so. The reason for this is that the birds in question relate these events to the words uttered during the course of them. It was long believed that parrots and other talking birds merely engaged in imitation, until research showed that these creatures actually have surprising mental abilities. Indeed, scientists now believe that they have only just begun to understand the complexity in bird communication. Studies performed by Professor Irene Pepperberg since 1977 on the subject of animal behavior have provided information about the bird's ability to speak and to understand. The most striking of these studies involved an African parrot named Alex. Alex was able to communicate with the researcher by using specific words, to understand commands given to him, to express his own wishes, to count, and to recognize objects, colors, and shapes. According to scientists, this capacity is the result of learning, which itself is an indication of high consciousness. At the end of the study, this parrot had learned short, adjective-based sentences. For example, it was able to distinguish between red, blue, green, yellow, orange, gray, and purple. It was able to use the numbers 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 in order to determine the number of objects. It was able to name 5 different shapes according to whether they had 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6 sides. When shown a toy car, it was able to say what it was. It was also able to understand that an object with a particular color and shape represented a different category, green and 3-sided. It would answer in terms of a specific category when asked what color or what shape an object was. To put it in another way, it would not respond in terms of shape when asked about the color of something, but would state the name of the color itself. In the same way, it would give the correct answer when asked about something's shape, and if the answer square were expected, it would answer in terms of shape rather than of color. It was observed as a result of this study that Alex was also able to provide correct answers about names, colors, shapes, and materials not used in the training. When shown 2 different colored keys, for instance, and asked which color key was the larger, Alex would again give the right answer. Or when shown the 2 keys and when asked what the difference was between them, he would say that it was their color.
Right, different color. All right, now look.
This must encourage us to reflect on these as signs of the knowledge and the intelligence in Allah's creation. It is Allah who creates birds with their various abilities such as speech and sound imitation. It is by the will of Allah that these animals display a superior ability that far exceeds the expected capacity of their brains and exhibit the most astounding behavior. This and thousands of other comparable examples in nature are vehicles whereby people can once again see the power and might of Allah. Showing people who are unaware of Allah's creation will help them ponder on this miracle. It is also a means whereby the faithful can go even deeper in faith. Allah has commanded us to reflect on the countless proofs of creation on the earth and in the sky. However, it must not be forgotten that only those people who listen to the voice of their conscience can see these evident proofs and, by Allah's leave, grasp their significance. I seek refuge in Allah from the accursed Satan. Have they not looked at the sky above them, how we structured it and made it beautiful, and how there are no fissures in it? And the earth, how we stretched it out and cast firmly embedded mountains onto it, and caused luxuriant plants of every kind to grow in it, an instruction and a reminder for every penitent human being. This rational behavior in the animals we have been looking at poses a major dilemma for the theory of evolution, which claims that the living things in nature developed by chance. This theory, which has been completely discredited, is unable to offer any evidence to support its own claims regarding the origin of life. It also leaves unanswered questions about the origin of the countless extraordinary properties possessed by living things. For years, evolutionists have been trying to determine similarities between chimpanzees and human beings in order to obtain evidence regarding the supposed family links between the two. Yet, despite all the time and effort involved, all their endeavors to get chimpanzees to speak have resulted in failure. Despite all the efforts of animal trainers and researchers ever since the 17th century to get monkeys to speak, all their labors have ended in disappointment. Thus, evolutionists struggle to display apes as the most convenient animal to learn speech, proved to end in disappointment. This has once again revealed that there is no relationship between chimpanzees and human beings of the kind dreamed of by evolutionists. In addition, the sounds produced by chimpanzees are very primitive when compared to the abilities of parrots. The ability of certain birds to imitate speech invalidates the idea of evolutionists' main claim regarding the evolutionary family tree, also from this point of view. The fact that a parrot, which bears absolutely no physical resemblance to human beings, has the ability such as speech, which requires considerable intelligence, does not fit into any evolutionary pattern. According to evolutionists, chimpanzees should be immediately behind man on the fictitious evolutionary family tree. However, talking birds, one of the living things created by Allah, invalidate these evolutionist claims with their high consciousness and ability to imitate sound. Another aspect of this subject that troubles evolutionists concerns the origin of bird intelligence. If, as evolution maintains, birds are less developed than primates, then how did birds suddenly come to acquire this property that primates lack? In attempting to account for this, evolutionists ascribe primates' inability to imitate speech to the difference in their throat structures. Yet this explanation is inadequate. Birds' throat structures also do not resemble those of human beings in any way. Yet thanks to the ability bestowed on them by Allah, they are easily able to imitate human speech. The invalidity of this evolutionist claim is expressed by W. H. Thorpe, a Cambridge University zoologist and recognized authority in the field, in these terms: all one can say is that the vocal organs of birds are apparently much less appropriate for imitating human speech than those of the chimpanzee or gorilla. I think that if you showed a bird syrinx to a laryngologist who had never seen one and said, "How is it that an animal with this can talk?" he would say, "It is utterly impossible." As we have seen, this ability given to some birds by Allah is an important example that invalidates evolutionist explanations. No matter how different their throat structures may be, Allah has created birds in such a way as to be able to talk. These birds do so with a clarity that astonishes human beings. We encounter the same fact everywhere when we look in nature, not just in the example discussed here. Living things possess highly ordered, complex structures that totally invalidate the theory of evolution's claims of chance. Much scientific research in different spheres has totally undermined Darwin's claims. The truth is obvious and right before our very eyes. Allah has created all living things separately and flawlessly, and with ever more immaculate systems. Allah reveals this truth in the Qur'an. I seek refuge in Allah from the accursed Satan. He is Allah, the Creator, the Maker, the Giver of forms. To Him belong the most beautiful names. Everything in the heavens and the earth glorifies Him. He is the Almighty, the All-Wise. During this film, we have been looking at birds that imitate sounds, one of the marvelous life forms created by Allah. We have witnessed the perfection of the mechanism they possess in order to be able to replicate the sounds they hear. The scientific findings emerging from research reveals that this perfect mechanism in birds is the work of a flawless creation. Allah's sublime knowledge and artistry that He manifests in the entities He creates are too evident to be covered up by any misleading theory. Swans, peacocks, bright-colored parrots, and more living things than can possibly be listed, even in general terms, refute the claims of chance and exhibit the infinite might of our Lord, who creates them at every moment. Allah has revealed countless proofs of His existence. He manifests His omniscience and His infinite knowledge in living things. With His infinite compassion, our Almighty Lord causes the most unexpected and the most helpless creatures, which often do not even possess a brain, to carry out unbelievable actions. As a result of this, many living things, large and small, all over the world exhibit unexpected actions and behavior that astonish human beings. Every living thing carries proofs that show us that it was created. All this magnificent creation belongs to our Lord, Allah, Lord of the earth, the skies, and all that lies between. Our duty is to reflect with all honesty on these proofs created by Allah, to praise and glorify Him, and to fear Him as His due. I seek refuge in Allah from the accursed Satan. That is Allah your Lord. There is no God but Him, the Creator of everything, so worship Him. He is responsible for everything.